Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Holmes, and today we have a hot topic to go over today. Why do I consider this a hot topic? Because we're talking about stress. Now, all of us experience stress. We're going to have stress no matter what we do in life. Even the happiest person in the world has some sort of stress in their life. But what I want to talk about today is what chronic stress does to the brain. Now, even those who are extremely happy and have some form of stress, a lot of those people, they won't experience the negative side effects of stress on the brain because they have good stress coping mechanisms. There's things that are put in place that help them cope with stress so it doesn't start to destroy their life and destroy their brain. So today we're going to talk about what are some of the biggest stressors on our body that will then cause changes in brain function, and then more importantly, what you should do in order to have a healthier brain and how to handle stress better. Okay, so today's topic, chronic stress and your brain. There's a lot of different types of stress that our body experiences. For example, physiological stresses. Those are what we consider chemical stresses on the body. So for example, blood sugar problems. We see a ton of people with blood sugar issues. And I'm not just talking about diabetes or pre-diabetes. This is even people with low blood sugar who are just eating the wrong foods at the wrong time, or simply don't eat, or they're not eating at the right times, like skipping breakfast, skipping lunch, never eating dinner, going to bed hungry. All of that kind of stuff causes massive blood sugar issues, which is a huge stressor on our brain, will cause hormone shifts, will cause memory issues, headaches, all that kind of stuff that we're going to get into. Anemia is, how do you know if you have some sort of anemia? Well, one, of course, real classic type of anemia is those iron deficiency anemias. Usually someone knows when they have one because they bruise extremely easily. That's one telltale sign of some sort of iron deficiency anemia. But there's other types of anemias as well. What you want to get is a CBC done to figure out what type of anemia that you have. Now, the problem with lab ranges is they are really wide. So if you're on that borderline low or borderline high, you still might have some sort of iron need or a B vitamin need, then that need is still just as stressful as a full-blown anemia on our brain. Inflammation causes massive amounts of stress on the brain. Chronic infections. We see chronic hidden infections in so many individuals. We see a lot of gut infections. They're causing a lot of bloat, a lot of distension, a lot of diarrhea and constipation. Those chronic infections that aren't necessarily in the brain can still cause brain degeneration. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Autoimmunity and, of course, chronic pain causes a lot of issues as well. Then we also have psychological stress. This is the one that we're probably most familiar with, is physiological stress. So that includes excess work. So the American lifestyle is really high demand and high work. So what we often have is too many hours in a day and too much to do, whether we're either staying at home with the kids or we have an outside job. A lot of that, all that excess work and so little time and those high demands are very, very psychologically stressful. Lack of sleep. Now that excess work can cause lack of sleep too. So what are some of the first things to go when we have a lot of work to do? Good sleeping habits. We tend to stay up a lot later, or we wake up a lot earlier so that we can finish whatever it is that we need to do. And of course, healthy eating habits and workouts. We start going to more fast food because it's so much faster. We quit doing our workouts because we simply don't have enough time. All those healthy habits go out through the window when we have all this massive amount of stress and too much to do. Unhealthy relationships are, of course, a psychological stress. Lack of job and life satisfaction is a huge stressor for us. And of course, no stress outlet will enhance our stress. Oftentimes, I recommend to my patients, spend 10 minutes to yourself. Just 10 minutes, and we'll get into a little bit more detail about those 10 minutes in a minute. What I want to talk about now is what that chronic stress does to your brain. Chronic stress causes a huge breakdown in what's called the blood-brain barrier. That blood-brain barrier separates the good things that should be going into the brain from the bad things that should not enter the brain. It is a safety net for our brain. It prevents a lot of diseases and a lot of large proteins passing through the brain. When we have chronic stress, what we have is a huge amount of cortisol release, which causes a huge amount of inflammation. That cortisol is what causes the blood-brain barrier to break down. Now, a lot of times when I say cortisol and I'm talking to a group of women, what they do is we tend to point to our bellies when someone says cortisol, because we think it gives us a lot of belly fat. The appropriate amounts of cortisol, we need that Goldilocks level of just about everything. When we have way too much cortisol, yes, that can lead to belly fat. That's a whole nother physiological process that we can get into some other time. But that massive amount of cortisol is going to be very detrimental to our brain. So we'll see breakdown of that blood-brain barrier, which causes a huge amounts of neuroinflammation. The brain is now inflamed. So what does that mean? Lots of headaches, increase in migraines, light sensitivity, sound sensitivity, and we're extremely irritable. We are generally a very unhappy individual. Now, it also increases the likelihood of neuroautoimmunities, things such as cerebellar ataxia. We also will see brain atrophy. It is shown on MRIs. There are studies done of healthy, happy individuals and those chronically stressed. Looking at their brain on an MRI, we actually see the brain shrink. We have smaller brains under chronic stress. So then it enhances neurodegeneration and diseases like Alzheimer's disease. It will also cause degradation or degeneration of the hippocampus. Hippocampus is a really important part of our brain. What it does is all that short-term memory is converted into long-term memory in our hippocampus. So when we have issues with chronic stress, it hurts the hippocampus and we see a decrease in our ability to remember things. So it's like walking into a room and not really understanding why you walked into the room, always losing your keys, your phone. You have a conversation with someone and suddenly you can't remember their name anymore. That's a huge issue with the hippocampus. It also decreases our visual processing and it impairs the cortisol melatonin rhythm. So cortisol should be high in the morning and then slope down and low at night. Cortisol wakes us up bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, low at night, so we can rest and go to sleep. Melatonin, that sleep hormone, is the opposite rhythm. Low in the morning, and then high at night, so we can rest and go to sleep. When we have high stress, we have high cortisol all day long. And when that cortisol will actually shut down the melatonin pathway. So if we have high cortisol all day long, we have low melatonin. And low melatonin means we can't sleep very well. So now we have another psychological stress of not getting enough sleep. So what is it that you can do to get your stress under control? We here work a lot on physiological stress for our patients. That is, of course, number one. What we have noticed is when we can get these physiological stresses under control, we see huge changes in how you are able to handle psychological stress. Because you've got a whole lot less stress, because about half this board is now missing when it comes to your stress process. So blood sugar issues, eat breakfast. Eat breakfast within 45 minutes of being awake. If you're someone who likes to go work out in the morning, eat something before your workout. You don't have to have your full breakfast before you work out, but you gotta eat something. And then when you get home, have your real breakfast. Have lunch, have dinner, never go to bed hungry. How do you decrease inflammation and control your blood sugar at the same time? Eat the right foods. It can be as simple as that. The more you can stick to protein and vegetables and a little bit of fruit, the better off you're gonna be. Anemias, of course, get your blood work done. Check for chronic infections. Get proper lab work done by the appropriate healthcare professionals, and they can guide you on helping with your physiological stress. For psychological stress, I highly recommend 10 minutes to yourself. 10 minutes out of your whole day. Now that takes a lot of training to do for us who are extremely busy. 10 minutes, shut that door. Shut that door, even if you gotta shut it on your pets, you gotta shut it on your significant other, you gotta shut it on even on your kids. Now a lot of us think, well, that's extremely selfish. It is not. Putting that on an airplane, they tell you to put on your mask before you put your mask on your children. You have to take care of yourself so you can then take care of others. It is not selfish to want to be a healthy individual. So take those 10 minutes, whether it's 10 minutes of meditation, a 10-minute walk. Now, I don't want to hear that you went on that walk and spent that whole 10 minutes making a list of things you should be doing instead of walking. That's very common too. Be very mindful during a 10-minute walk. Watch the leaves in your trees that are being hit by the wind. Look at how many birds you can find. Look at the dog that's running off the leash that should be on a leash. Whatever it is that you want to focus on that keeps you mindful of the present rather than racing through your mind of all the other things you should be doing. That is a huge deal. That right there helps so much with those psychological stressors. Set a bedtime. Now, as adults, I remember as a kid, I was so excited I'd be able to stay up for however late I wanted, watch as much TV as I wanted, eat as many Twinkies as I wanted. Little did I know that as an adult, I would want a bedtime. So I'm very strict about my bedtime and, believe it or not, my wake time. I don't care if it makes me a boring adult. It makes me a very healthy adult. And then, of course, one thing that I also recommend is no work in your bedroom. No work, no computers, no iPads, no working on anything, because that bedroom needs to be set for sleeping. All right, so those are some great tips that I have for you about how to handle your stress. When you can get a handle on some of those simpler stressors, we can see huge changes in our brain function. We'll see decrease in light sensitivity, decrease in sound sensitivity, decrease in headaches and migraines, and overall, we are a much healthier and happier person. So if you found this video interesting, I highly recommend you check out some of our other videos, as well as check out our website, ibrainandbody.com. We have a load of blog articles that are research-based that talk all about this type of information. Thanks, everyone, and I'll see you soon.